All right, so we've got this roundtable discussion from Anthropic about prompt engineering,
Mhm.
diving into how the folks behind Claude think about, the art of talking to AI.
Yeah, and it's from these, researchers and engineers, like the people who actually use this stuff every day, gives us a much better picture than just, reading a definition.
Totally. It's a peek behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And speaking of definitions, they did spend a good chunk of time talking about what prompt engineering even is. So from their discussion, what stood out to you?
Well, they instead of just saying, it's like programming, which we've all heard like a million times,
Right.
they went a bit deeper. They were talking about how it's not just about the technical skill of like writing the prompt, but it's more about understanding, how the AI is going to interpret that.
So it's not enough to just like tell it what to do. You have to think about how it's going to like process and understand that command.
Yeah, exactly. They really emphasize this need for like clarity and precision. It's almost like you're explaining something to a new intern
Okay.
who's really smart but lacks experience.
Okay. I like that analogy. So
Mm.
it's like you're breaking down this complex task into like these digestible steps for the AI to understand.
Yes. And thinking about like where it might misunderstand you, like they were even talking about like if you're prompting something that a user is going to interact with. Like, think about user error,
Right.
typos, slang, like all the messy ways that we as humans communicate.
So there's almost like an empathy element to it. Like you have to be able to think from the AI's perspective and the end user's perspective.
Absolutely. And this kind of ties into one of the myths that they debunked, which is that you need perfect grammar to write a good prompt.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'll admit, I've definitely wondered about that.
Yeah.
What did they say?
Well, they basically said that, being grammatically correct, it's good, it's helpful, it's not the be all and end all. Because oftentimes the AI is smart enough to kind of get what you're saying, even if you're, missing a comma or.
Right. So it's more about the clarity of thought and less about like, are you getting your punctuation exactly right?
Exactly. And another thing they talked about was this practice of role playing in prompts.
Oh, right, right, right. So
Yeah.
so like you start your prompt with you are a historian or you are a chef.
Exactly.
And that's to kind of like, I don't know, nudge the AI into taking on that persona a little bit. Do they still find that effective?
It depends. They say, in some cases, yeah, it can be really helpful. But with these newer models, especially like, Claude,
Yeah.
which kind of already know that they are AIs, sometimes just being direct is better.
So don't try to like trick it into playing a role. Just be straightforward about it.
Exactly. And I think this speaks to like how prompt engineering as a field is evolving. It's
Yeah.
it's becoming less about finding these like clever hacks
Right?
and more about like really understanding the AI's capabilities and using them to your
It's
advantage.
like working with it, not against it.
Exactly.
And on that note, they also talked about the future of prompting.
Yes.
And I got to say, some of their predictions are really, really interesting.
Yeah. The one that I thought was really interesting was this idea of AI becoming like our prompt assistant.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on. So you're saying AI that can help us write better prompts?
Yeah, like eventually we'll be able to use AI to guide us towards more precise prompts. It's almost like having an editor, but for your AI interactions.
Okay. So instead of like replacing prompt engineers, it's like AI is giving prompt engineers new tools.
Exactly.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and it gets even wilder. Imagine a world where the AI is so good that it starts interviewing you to figure out what you need.
Wow. So it's like it flips the script completely. Like we're so used to trying to figure out how to talk to the AI, but now the AI is trying to understand us.
Yes. And they actually gave some like pretty cool examples of how they're already starting to experiment with this whole interviewing the AI concept.
Okay, well now I definitely need to hear more about this.
Let's get into it.
Interviewing the AI. Okay, so that sounds kind of like backwards almost,
Yeah.
but I kind of get it. How do they even do that?
So they use it in a couple of different ways. One is to deal with this thing they were calling like the curse of knowledge,
Yeah.
which is, when you know something so well that
Yeah.
you forget what it's like to not know it.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like trying to explain something to someone and they just like stare at you blankly.
Totally. So instead of assuming that the AI has all this background information that a human expert might, they'll actually interview it, ask these really specific questions related to to the task. It's almost like they're like onboarding, a new team member
Okay.
who's brilliant, but like doesn't have the context.
So it helps them break down their own assumptions, like
Yeah.
figure out where they might be getting too in the weeds.
Exactly. And by seeing how the AI responds to these very specific questions, they can then, adjust their prompts
Yeah.
and give it just the right level of detail and guidance.
It's like they're using the AI to double check their own thinking,
Yeah.
like a sounding board almost.
Exactly. And this actually highlights something that they emphasized like throughout the whole discussion, which was this idea of like treating the AI as a capable partner. Don't baby it.
Right.
Don't assume that it can't handle complexity.
So don't be afraid to give it the full picture.
Yeah, like sometimes the best thing you can do is just like feed the AI a whole research paper
Right.
instead of trying to like sum it up yourself or
Wow. So you're saying they'll give it an entire paper? Like what kind of results did they see from that?
it's surprising how well it works. Like they found that a lot of times the AI was better at pulling out like the key concepts from the original source material, even better than a human trying to do it.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. Like it really speaks to the power of these AI models, right? To process information that complex.
Yeah. And it challenges this assumption we have that you have to dumb things down.
Right.
Like sometimes the best approach is just to trust that the AI can figure it out.
So it's about finding that balance between giving it enough to work with,
Right.
but also like trusting it to do its thing.
Exactly. And it ties back to this whole evolution of prompting. As AIs get more advanced, we have to get more advanced too.
Right.
It's not about these clever little tricks anymore. It's about a true partnership.
Yeah. And part of that partnership is, like you said, recognizing what the AI is good at and letting it do it. But what about challenges like from the AI side of things? I'm really curious to know, like, did they talk about jailbreaking at all?
They did.
Okay.
They were actually very upfront about it. They acknowledged that while they've gotten a lot better at understanding how jailbreaking works, it's still tough.
Yeah.
Like it's constantly evolving. It's this weird mix of hacking and like knowing how the AI was trained. It's really interesting.
It's like a back and forth then.
Yeah, it's like an arms race.
Okay.
But they made this point that it's all part of the process. Like jailbreaking attempts, as much as they can be annoying, they also teach us a lot.
Oh, interesting. So it's like they're learning as those who are trying to break the rules are also learning.
Yeah. And this is like this constant evolution is what makes this whole field so cool. Like what works today might not work tomorrow and that's fine.
It sounds like being open to that and always being willing to learn is kind of key here.
Absolutely. And that's something that they really emphasized. Like there's no one right way to do this.
Okay.
The best techniques, they depend on the AI, the specific task. It's very personal too.
So it's almost like you're developing like an intuition
Yeah.
for how to talk to AI.
Yeah. And you get that intuition from trying things, making mistakes.
Right.
And just like experimenting and seeing what sticks.
It's interesting because it's like this very cutting edge technology.
Right.
But the way you get good at it is actually like a very, very, classic learn by doing approach. Did they leave us with any like final thoughts or takeaways?
They did. And it's actually a question that I think perfectly sums up like where this is all headed. And it's this. If you could have the AI interview you to understand what you need, how would that change how you approach prompting?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
It makes you think about like how much deeper that collaboration between humans and AI could get.
Totally. And it reminds us that, the future of AI isn't just about making AI smarter. It's about making that relationship between humans and AI stronger.
Yeah. A relationship built on understanding, communication, and like you said, this spirit of exploration.
Exactly. So thinking about everything we've discussed, like what really stuck with you? What are you going to like take away from this whole thing?
Well, I got to say that question about the AI interviewing us, like that one's really stuck with me because it really makes you think about like a future where, AI isn't just a tool. It's more like a real collaborator.
Yeah.
And to your point about takeaways, I think I'm left feeling cautiously optimistic,
Cautious optimism. Okay. Tell me more about that.
Well, on the one hand, it's obvious that this whole field, it's still so new.
Yeah.
There's just so much we don't know yet. Like it's changing all the time.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, like the potential here,
Yeah,
it's huge.
it is.
Just the fact that we're even having these conversations, about AI as a partner, I think it's really incredible.
I think you're right. And it highlights this like really important point, which is we need to like stay curious, but we also need to think critically,
Totally.
about this technology. Be willing to try things, make mistakes, but also really consider like what are the implications of all of this?
Absolutely. Because like ultimately the future of AI is on us.
Yeah.
It's our responsibility to like guide its development and make sure that it's, used for good.
Well said. And if this conversation, if this deep dive has gotten even a few people thinking about that,
Yeah.
I'd say, we did something right.
I think so too. So
Yeah.
to everyone listening, like keep exploring, keep asking questions, and yeah, keep the conversation going.
Absolutely.
This is really just the beginning